Well, welcome to another lesson of the Focus on Contentful course. I am Marcelo Lune, the Headless Creator. As always, right there, get a hold of me, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. Send me any questions, comments, ideas you have. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Today, my guest presenter is Andy Rossi. He's the Senior Product Manager at DocuSign, and he's actually back. He was in the podcast where we had a great interview and chat with him all about design systems and content modeling. But today, he's going to show us how to create a preview environment in Contentful to speed up the QA process. Now, with that said, let's get Andy on and let's have a quick chat with him. Andy, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. Glad to have you back here. Thanks for being here again.
Good to be back.
Definitely had a great chat with you all about design systems and content modeling, so people can go watch that and listen to that. Real quick, where are you located?
I'm in Dayton, Ohio.
Oh, okay, cool. So I'm in Southern California, so that's what, 3 hours ahead, 2 hours? 3 hours, right?
3 hours. Yeah, 3 hours.
Yeah. Okay.
And
cool.
30.
Very cool. So real quick, for those that don't know you, you currently working at DocuSign as a senior product manager there. But how did you get into technology? What attracted you to this stuff?
Oof. I mean, it's been a long time, but kind of fun. Like, I got into technology because, well, my sister is in a wheelchair. She's nonverbal, and for her to communicate when we were little, she had this computer that essentially, she'd move her head around and like rest on a key, and it would say words, and I learned how to program on that, and it became, since then I just kind of like took that and ran with it. So it's been a lot of tinkering with things and then getting into what I thought was the right career of, computer science for me. It's an awesome career, but I found that where I was learning it, there was not a whole lot of passion behind it. But I discovered design and the web through a different program, and took everything I learned from computer science and everything I've been tinkering as a kid, and then applied it to design and building websites. And that was, I don't know, like 20 some years ago. And since then, it's just been building and building and building. And pretty recently, I got into product management, and still very in a technical role, not necessarily just standing back and having other people do work. It was more hands-on, and I wanted to be in the trenches and helping with the work there. So from idea to execution. So it's been, a heck of a lot of fun to really spread the career across these different spectrums, I guess.
That's an amazing story and very inspirational. That's really cool. Do you remember your first computer?
It was an Apple IIgs, but I also had a Commodore
2GS? I don't remember the 2GS. My first Apple was the Apple II Plus. So look how old I am, right?
No, I think it was a color screen. It had a daisy chained 3.5-inch floppy, like the first one, attached to a 5 1/4 inch floppy. And you could run an operating system off a floppy disk. There was no hard drive, so if you wanted to run anything, it was off a disk. It was fun.
3.5 inch or 5 1/4?
3.5 inch.
Yeah, see, I'm older than you, so it was 5 1/4 for me. At least I wasn't on the 8-inch disc. That's really old.
The real.
So very cool. So do you like in product management, because that is usually not a very hands-on coding position, right? Do you like sort of the mix of the business with the technical aspects, or why did you get into that?
I joined a new team, and it was a bit of a situation where we needed help in a technical and product management area at the same time, because it was a smaller team, right, initially. Mm-hmm. And everything I've learned up to that point was super applicable to the work I was doing. I was focused on starting up a new content platform. I had experience with headless CMSs. I had experience building design systems, websites powered by these things. So I had a really good point of view for these different areas. So it helped me drive those work streams. And I'd actually argue I'm more of a solutions architect in that regard. So helping all these disparate systems connect together and plan for the platform as we grow. And
that's a very important role to have in an organization. So cool, very cool. Well, with that said, we'll go ahead and get started here.
Okay.
And I'll let you take over. For those of you watching live, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. I'll ask Andy. Andy, it's all yours, man.
All right, thank you. Here we go. Let's talk about, start over here. So Contentful and the preview API. So what exactly are we building here? And I'm not just going to read these slides to you, but real quick, like the scope where we are building a simple page level preview environment. And I want to say that this is actually constructed from the helpful Next.js Contentful Bootstrap project. So it's that, but I ripped a bunch of stuff out to make it more simple and easy to consume. Yeah, so we need Contentful, we have Next.js and Storybook and our imagination. So what can we do with these tools together? And there's a couple dependencies here. You need to have a Contentful account. I mean, this is a Contentful course. We have to have a API key set up for it. That includes the development environment for the content delivery API and the content preview API. And then a content model that fits this. I'm showing you an environment where it's my personal Contentful environment, so there are a few extra things in there. But we have a blog post with these fields: title, slug, author, excerpt, body, and a published date, and then an author reference. So this would be a name, a picture, and a bio, and they are connected. And I will have this code available here, github.com/Andrew Rocco, contentful-preview-examples. So feel free to download it, check it out, poke at it.
And we'll add a link to the bonus section too, so they can see it under the bonus section of the course.
Great. Awesome. Okay, he'll be there too. But yeah, without further ado, let's roll into it. All right, so here's our content model. Again, I'm just gonna go through it. We have a blog post. There's a bunch of extra stuff in here I've listed because, again, this is my personal and active environment, but I'm only pulling a few of these things out. So title, slug, author, excerpt, body, and published date. Don't worry about SEO, description, or tags. And then the author. Super simple: name, picture, bio. And inside the blog post, the author field is a reference to an author. Additionally, an API key. So I have a preview environment I set up. Just make sure that you have an API key, and that's all you should. So make you have these values here, you'll copy, and you'll need them for an environment variable file. So hold on to that. And then let's see, we have a content preview. This is where we're going to be setting up a lot of the links between Contentful and these services. So that's from a web standpoint, Contentful standpoint. We'll get into more details in a second. So let's look at the code. For this first part, let's talk about Next.js. For this all to work, we have this env file. And in my repository, there's a sample file, and you just have to fill these values out. So you need the Contentful space ID, the CDA token, the CPA token, and a preview secret value. And this can be any value you want. This is very important to keep. Remember what it is, because we're going to be using it for our preview URL structure. Now, a quick thing about Next.js. It is a very helpful web framework to build everything on. It can serve Contentful very well. It can statically generate pages, but it can also have completely SSR side pages, or a hybrid model where it's static, but then it dynamically hydrates based on some code being updated or some dynamic content being updated somewhere. So it does a lot of work. It's really easy to use. And what makes it different from most frameworks is that it has a directory structure based file system API. So there's a pages directory, and inside the pages directory, there's, like, I'm going to simplify this, we have an index. And consider the index here is the root document of your web page, so your home page. For any additional pages, you can create directories, and it would be the same as if you typed, website.com/posts. Also, Next has what's called it's like a page wildcard type page where you can give it any value. And essentially this is something that's reused. So in a blog structure, it would be, website.com/post/ the URL of the blog post. And that's basically a catch-all file. So the difference here is the index. This is your home page. It just you choose how to render it, how you want to render it. And then the slug is basically the blog post in this specific example. So, how are we going to structure it? There's, the title of the page, which shows up in the tab. There's, extra links. There's a title, a post body, and an author card at the bottom of each post. So based on this setup, what does it look like here? So again, this is based off the Contentful Next.js sample with some stuff ripped out. So, I have a couple sample posts. I have, the most recent is featured here. And inside this feature, we have basically, actually, let me get out of preview mode. Same thing, but pretty basic copy, images from a rich text field, and an author card down below. Pretty basic. All right, so those are the guts, but let's talk about the fun stuff. We have the API file, and this works the same as the page directory structure, where you can create API calls inside the structure. And in here, this would be the same as website.com/API/preview. So you can write API functions right as you would a normal page. This first one I want to talk about, though, is a library API. This is pretty much the backbone of everything we're doing here. It connects to Contentful. It has all the functions inside to query for specific content types, collections, whatever it is, and it's through GraphQL. So you write the GraphQL query, and here all I care about is a blog post. So it's the getting the slug, title, excerpt, author, which is containing a name, a picture, and inside a picture, URL, description. So it's turtles all the way down. It's just drilling to get as much information as you need and ignoring the stuff that you don't. In these specific situations and based on the design, for an author card, I need the name at least. I need a picture, and I need to know the actual URL of the image. I need to know the description for alt text to put on the image itself, and a bio, which is just a short bit of text to put underneath the name of the individual authoring the blog post. Then the body, which is a rich text field, contains a lot of extra stuff. We have the JSON representation, and then a links group, which essentially looks for all the embedded assets inside of a rich text field. And in this case, a picture of Jeff Goldblum. And inside those assets, if I'm looking for an image, I want to make sure that I get the URL, the description, the width, and the height. The width and the height comes from the images API from Contentful, and that is necessary for the Next.js images component. So one of the requirements for the images component is a width and height dimension, and if you don't have that, you have to set it to full. And if you don't want the image to take up the entire screen, it's best to use a width and height. So, and then there's the publish date, which comes back as a date object. So we have our standard fetch GraphQL function, which goes out and sends this query to, or a query to Contentful and gets you a response. What's important here is that there's a preview argument. So if you pass preview true, you also have to pass the preview secrets to actually have it work, as well as making sure that you're connected to the preview or the content preview API. These different functions are just to collect different parts of the blog or blogs. And I also wrote a function here called get image by ID, and we'll get to that later. But we can basically get all modes of a blog post, including a preview post. As long as we know the slug, and as long as it's in preview mode, it will return something. But we can go into more detail about this in a different way, but this is all documented. This is all available for you to read, but pretty much standard functions for querying. Let's go back to the preview API. This is an API call that we are going to depend on to actually present a preview of either changed content or unpublished content. And what this does is basically check to see if you are supplying a secret value. This is the value that comes from the env file. And if so, then show the actual post by the slug, query it, and show all the information you need. It also puts the client into a preview mode, so you can view other posts in preview mode, and you have to manually exit to no longer see that. This is a security feature, because if this is something that you'd want to load on production, then you want to make sure that random people can't just get to the preview content. And again, this project is all based on local work, so it's not really something that we're going to be publishing anywhere, but it's something that it's easy to publish if you want to put it out on production somewhere else. But for now, it's all local.
So just to be clear real quick, so this is to stop people from accessing like draft
Exactly.
entries that you have, right? Because you're going through the preview and you're pulling drafts to make sure before you publish.
Exactly. And that's, yeah, you don't want that out in the world yet.
Right, that makes sense. Cool.
Okay, so now that we have all this stuff set up, let's actually go back to Contentful and view the content model for one more time. So, the blog post, we have this super basic. Again, the author reference is there, and then we can go to content. We have I have a couple blog posts here, but none of this is actually going to be previewable. If you by default, if you go into a blog post, there's this open preview button right here, and it's default, and it'll say, hey, it's not set up. Please set it up. So let's set it up. Go to the content preview. I actually have one set up, but nothing turned on. When you create a preview environment link like this, you have a lot of options. You can choose to set every individual content type with a different preview URL. Very important. But then look off to the right, and it gives you a little bit of help here in the sidebar telling you that there are tokens available. So these are basically bits of information that you can put inside a URL. It will be parsed by Contentful and then provide you a very nice URL with a bunch of information inside it, any information you want. So you can provide, for example, entry.sys.id, which returns the ID of the entry. Or if you want a value from a specific field, you can do entry.fields. Field name. If you know the locale, you can provide a locale code. That is manual, though. One of the, I guess I would say, deficiencies of preview URLs is that you cannot send a dynamic locale with it. You have to know what the locale is. So I have to put in manually ENCA for English Canadian. But that's for a different discussion. But let's look at blog posts. We have our Next.js app running. We have a preview environment capability added to the app. So now we just have to construct a URL. And again, this is local. So what I'm doing here, calling a local app, I'm calling the preview API that is in Next.js right here. And I'm providing a secret, anything you want, inside this string here. And this is coming from your env file. It has to match. Whatever the secret key is, these two should match. Otherwise, you get an error state and you can not actually see the preview. So this is the security part of it. People can't guess what the key is. Therefore, they cannot get into your preview environment. And then I added some extra information like the slug. So the actual entry slug. Everything there. All right, cool. I'm going to save. And now when I go into content, I can view a blog post. This is now active. I can choose to copy the value so you can see it in the URL. So I can go this. Sample blog post. So we know it's real, but we can also just click it and it'll open a new tab and boom. So this is a blog post in preview mode. I have this alert up top to let you know you're in preview mode, and you can exit at any time and go back to normal previewing. So if I close this, change, and then open the preview again after it saves, you see the new change. But if I go to, this might actually be in preview mode still. Nope. So it's still the, oh, it is in preview mode up here. I'm sorry. They actually, it's a session-based thing, so it'll actually hang out in the browser for a while. So if I exit, yes. All right. So we're now outside of preview mode. Sample blog post test is not what's happening.
Quick
So
question for you on
yeah.
the secret key that you're passing, right? Where you had it in the settings. Any way of passing that through the payload so that way it's hidden, or is that the only way to pass a secret key is through the URL?
You can pass it through the payload. I think it's just easier to manage to make sure that you are seeing it in the URL. Like, since this is my personal environment,
Right.
I'm not really super concerned. And in environments or in larger installs, I also see it acting this way.
In the
It's
URL.
just easier to manage that way. Otherwise, you have to create custom webhooks and a bunch of other
Right.
more complex situations for it to work. But from a preview URL standpoint, you can't really do a whole lot with them. They're very static. And this is, in my opinion, the simplest way of making this work.
Got it. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Let's see. So